Would you believe me if I told you that the coldest and most calculating killer of the 19th century wore little boots, said yes sir, and yes ma'am, with a smile on his lips, and was only 8 years old? In 1867, in the rural heart of Missouri, a blue-eyed boy with a soft voice silently terrorized an entire community, not with screams but with silence. 3 deaths, dozens of mutilated animals, and a hidden journal filled with notes that even the most experienced doctors of the time couldn't decipher. His name? Timothy Caldwell. And what you're about to hear is a case history chose to forget. In the stifling heat of the summer of 1867, an ancient secret began to unravel in Pettis County, Missouri, a secret buried among cornfields, silent chicken coops, and eyes that avoided the truth. About 20 kilometers south of the town of Sedalia, a property forgotten by time hid more than just debts or dreams shattered by the Civil War. It harbored something that defied medical explanations, legal frameworks, and the faith of ordinary men. At the center of this mystery, a child with neatly trimmed blonde hair and blue eyes that never reflected what they claimed to feel. His name was Timothy Caldwell. And what this child did among the fields and rural trails of a rebuilding America is something that, even today, cannot be told without a shiver down the spine. To the untrained eye, Timothy was just another war orphan. His father, William Caldwell, had died in Andersonville, one of the most brutal prisoner-of-war camps of the conflict. His mother, consumed by tuberculosis, died quietly in a bed borrowed from kind-hearted neighbors. When news of the tragedy reached Thomas Caldwell, William's older brother and owner of a struggling farm, the decision was practical. Taking the boy in meant 2 more hands for the labor, and perhaps some late consolation for the absence of children of his own. Timothy arrived at the farm in the spring of 1866, carrying a cloth bundle and eyes that seemed to know more than any child should. What no one could imagine at the time was that, along with him, came a string of events that would make even the most rational men in the region begin to fear the night. In appearance, the boy was impeccable. Polite, obedient, soft-spoken, and always helpful. He would say, "Excuse me," even to the roosters that crossed his path in the yard. He worked tirelessly, carried buckets, collected eggs, and wielded heavy tools with a maturity that was almost unsettling. He was never seen playing. Never came home with muddy clothes. Never quite seemed like a child. Aunt Sarah, a stern woman of few words, took pride in her well-behaved boy. Uncle Thomas, though appreciative of the help, confided in neighbors that the boy made him uneasy, as if constantly observing him, even when his eyes weren't moving. And that feeling wasn't unique to him. Even the town's doctor, Dr. Samuel Harding, a man of science trained in St. Louis and no stranger to the horrors of war, wrote in his journal that he had never felt so disturbed in the presence of another human being as when he looked into Timothy's eyes. Dr. Harding first met the boy during a routine visit, when Timothy accompanied his uncle into town to fetch medicine and supplies. The doctor described the encounter as ordinary, yet unsettling. The boy answered all questions with precision, maintained appropriate eye contact, and showed no signs of fear, restlessness, or shame. But there was something in his gaze, Harding later wrote, that wasn't childlike. It was clinical. As if I were the patient and he the observer. That account would become the first in a long series of journal entries, Harding soon becoming the only man who truly attempted to understand what Timothy really was. The small farming community surrounding the Caldwell property was tight-knit, and rumors spread faster than the waters of Willow Creek. The first incident that stirred whispers happened in late August of 1866. Mary Fletcher, a 5-year-old girl known for her infectious laugh and habit of talking to dragonflies, was found dead in the creek that ran between the properties. It was Timothy who alerted the family. He arrived at the Fletcher home with wet clothes, a pale face, and a steady voice. He said he had found her floating, unmoving, her head caught on a submerged branch. Dr. Harding was summoned, examined the body, and declared the cause of death to be accidental drowning. But something didn't add up. The water in that section of the creek barely reached knee-height. And Timothy, when describing how he had found her, used terms, details, and descriptions far beyond what one would expect from a child his age. He knew the exact position of her body, the murky color of the water, the way her dress had snagged on the branch, as if he had paused to memorize every detail before running for help. At the funeral he remained composed, eyes lowered, hands folded. He offered the grieving parents carefully rehearsed words of comfort. And when the others wept before the small white coffin, Timothy simply watched. Their neighbor, Elenina Patterson, a God-fearing woman and mother of 6, later remarked she had never seen a child so empty while looking at another child's corpse. He looked like he was learning, she said, not grieving? That was when the first whispers began to rise among the church pews. Something about that boy was wrong. The following weeks seemed to return a sense of normalcy to the town, until September arrived. Henrik Len, an elderly Norwegian immigrant who lived alone and tended to wild beehives on a cliffside, was found dead at the base of a rocky drop. His neck was broken. The scene seemed clear, an accident. But once again it was Timothy who found the body. And once again he came with an explanation already in hand. He said he saw the old man's hat caught in a thorn bush and, curious, climbed down to investigate. Maybe he was stung by bees and lost his balance, Timothy suggested. When Dr. Harding examined the body, something felt wrong. There were dead bees scattered around the corpse, an unusual number, yet the hives atop the cliff remained untouched. No signs of agitation. No damage to the nest. And more, the safety barrier surrounding the area had been moved, as if someone had prepared the ground for a fall. Those two events, taken individually, could have been tragic accidents. But in October, the disappearance of little Jacob Mills transformed what had once been just fear into something far more concrete. Something was deeply wrong in Sedalia. The 6-year-old boy vanished into the woods, and for 4 days, dozens of volunteers searched every inch of forest. Timothy joined the search and was tireless. On the 4th day before sunrise, he knocked on the Mills' door and said, "I think I found something." He led the adults to an old well, hidden beneath overgrown bushes and fallen branches. Jacob was down there, still alive but severely dehydrated. He died just a few hours later. Dr. Harding couldn't comprehend how Timothy had managed to hear crying coming from such a deep and isolated place. Even more troubling, the branches appeared to be deliberately arranged as if someone had hidden the opening, but only enough to keep it secret until the right moment. And so, with 3 deaths surrounded by far too many coincidences to ignore, Dr. Harding began to investigate, not as a physician, but as a silent observer of a darkness that seemed to wear the mask of kindness. He started visiting the Caldwell farm more frequently. He watched Timothy during the examinations of his aunt and uncle. He asked subtle questions. He took notes. And what he discovered was chilling. The boy had an unusual fascination with anatomy, death, and pain. Timothy asked how to tell if someone was truly dead. Which organs stopped functioning first. Whether someone could survive without a kidney. He claimed it was all to be prepared in case someone got hurt. But the expression in his eyes wasn't that of someone who wanted to help. It was the look of someone who wanted to understand, to study. As autumn settled over the dry fields of Missouri, Dr. Harding's doubts evolved into silent convictions. Timothy Caldwell wasn't just an unusual child. There was something in him, a cold, calculated element, a type of strategic intelligence that didn't align with his 8 years of age. And most disturbing of all, wherever he walked, death seemed to follow. Not in crowds, but in small, chilling waves. A chicken with a broken neck. A calf strangled in a fence. A lame horse that had to be put down. The neighbors started to notice. Foxes, some said. Coincidence, said others. But everyone knew, even if they didn't say it aloud, Timothy was always nearby. Elenina Patterson lost 17 chickens in 2 months. No signs of an attack. Not a single feather out of place. But the wound was always the same, clean, precise, delivered with exact force at the point where life ends. Dr. Harding began visiting the neighboring farms. And in every dead animal he saw patterns. Cuts at surgical angles. Fractures where none should have existed. This wasn't wild instinct. It was deliberate action. Timothy was testing something. Experimenting. Like a child scientist trying to understand the limits between pain and survival. It was during one of these visits to the Caldwell home that Timothy made his first slip. The boy, watching Harding examine a wound on a cow, casually asked, "How long would it live if the heart were pierced from behind the left rib?" The doctor froze. He turned to look at the boy. And for the first time he saw a genuine spark in Timothy's eyes, fascination. Not with the animal, but with the idea. The concept of death. He didn't want to save anything. He wanted to understand the precision of the end. That's when Harding began to change his approach. He knew he wouldn't be able to confront Timothy with proof. The science of the time couldn't accept the idea of a child predator. But if he gained the boy's trust, maybe Timothy would talk. And Timothy talked. During his visits, Harding began allowing the boy to observe examinations, listen to war stories and ask questions. And Timothy went deeper. He wanted to know about open wounds, amputations, screams. Did they scream before they passed out, doctor? He would ask in the same polite tone one might use to request more soup. And Harding would answer, mentally noting each deviation from the norm. He was facing something no medical textbook had ever prepared him for. A creature in the shape of a child, with the mind of a clinical experimenter. The situation escalated when Thomas Caldwell, Timothy's uncle, injured his back during the harvest. Immobilized, he required daily visits from the doctor. Sarah, overwhelmed, relied on Timothy to help manage the household. That gave Dr. Harding frequent access and time to observe. And it was during one of those quiet afternoons that Timothy revealed something more. "The cave," he said casually, "is where I think best." Harding knew in that very moment he had to see it. The path to the cave was narrow and overgrown with thorns. But when the doctor finally reached the entrance, a crack in the rock behind an ancient oak tree, what he found inside silenced even his clinical instincts. Bones. Neatly stacked piles. Not of hunted animals but of test subjects. Chickens, rabbits, squirrels. Each one in different stages of dissection. On a flat stone, crude instruments fashioned from metal, wood, and wire. And beside them a notebook. Inside, drawings. Not childish doodles, but diagrams. Anatomical maps. And notes written in meticulous handwriting. Subject remained conscious for 9 minutes after removal of the ocular globes. Applying pressure to point C5 results in brief vocalizations followed by motor failure. Dr. Harding closed the notebook, breathing heavily. He wasn't just looking at evidence that Timothy killed, he saw proof that the boy studied. He didn't act on impulse, rage, or trauma. He was methodical, scientific, and he was evolving. But worse was yet to come. Among the drawings there was something new. Human figures. Children. Adults. Each depicted in poses of pain, suffocation, drowning. One sketch showed a girl with her hair tied in a ribbon, clearly Mary Fletcher. Another portrayed old Henrik lying on the ground with dark dots around him, bees. And most disturbing of all, Jacob Mills at the bottom of a well, annotated with notes about dehydration, loss of consciousness, and estimated time of death. Timothy hadn't merely witnessed these deaths. He had orchestrated them. And now, he was documenting the effects, as if preparing a manual. Harding knew he couldn't bring this to the sheriff. None of it would be admissible in court. No one would believe it. But he had to do something. And so, he did. The following morning, he visited Sheriff Crawford. He told him everything. Showed him the drawings. Explained the pattern. And finally revealed a detail he had kept to himself until then. Timothy had said, word for word, that he wanted to see what would happen if he hurt someone who trusted him completely. Sheriff Crawford turned pale. That could only mean one thing. The next targets were Thomas and Sarah Caldwell. A plan was set. Harding would continue his regular medical visits. During one of them, he would administer a mild sedative to the couple, under the pretense of treating Thomas's back pain. It would keep them asleep safe. Meanwhile, the sheriff and 2 deputies would hide nearby. If Timothy made a move, they would be ready to intervene. And so it was done. The following morning, Dr. Harding arrived at the farm. But something was wrong. The silence was absolute. No animal sounds. No signs of life. Timothy appeared at the door. Clean face, immaculate clothes, hands scrubbed up to the elbows. "I've been waiting for you," he said. Harding stepped inside, keeping his composure. He found the couple unconscious, breathing slowly. They were alive, but sedated with surgical precision. When questioned, Timothy responded with disturbing calm. "I used some herbs I found in the woods. Some of them make people very quiet." What followed was the most disturbing conversation of the doctor's life. Timothy confessed everything. He told how he drowned Mary, luring her with a shiny stone. How he caused Henrik to fall using loose rocks and a bag of bees. How he kept Jacob alive for days, just to study the process of slow death. And now, he wanted to know how someone would react knowing they were going to die, while trying to save the people they loved. "You're perfect for this, doctor," Timothy said. "You know what I am. You understand what I'm capable of. And you'll fight until the very end. That is the ideal experiment." But before Timothy could act, Harding drew his pistol. The tension in the air was unbearable. Timothy smiled. 6 bullets. 6 people to protect. What happens when they run out? That was the moment the deputies burst in through the back door, weapons drawn. Timothy was subdued. And for the first time, he laughed. After being restrained with ropes and handed over to local authorities, Timothy Caldwell was kept in an improvised cell in the back of the sheriff's station in Sedalia. The boy did not cry. He didn't scream. He didn't beg. He simply watched. Constantly. His unwavering stare made older men avert their eyes, as if something inside them was being silently read, dissected. When asked if he had anything to say in his defense, Timothy replied only, "I'm too young to hang. And too interesting to forget." And in a way he was right. The county prosecutor was hesitant to accept the evidence. The drawings, though detailed, were dismissed as merely the sketches of a traumatized child. The dead animals? Farm accidents. The attempted poisoning of his aunt and uncle, however, was undeniable. 3 officers had witnessed the boy in action. Still, the legal system of the time wasn't equipped to handle what Timothy represented. An 8-year-old who planned and executed deaths with the cold precision of a surgeon wasn't something covered in 19th-century legal doctrine. After weeks of deadlock, a solution was proposed. Timothy would be sent to the Missouri State Hospital for the Insane in the town of Fulton. There, under the supervision of alienists, as psychiatrists were called at the time, he would be studied, treated, and kept away from society. Dr. Harding volunteered to accompany the boy to the institution. Not out of pity, but out of duty. And perhaps, something darker, an unspoken desire to understand just how far Timothy could go. At the hospital, Timothy adapted like a chameleon. Within days he learned to fake remorse. He learned to cry. He claimed he dreamed about his dead parents and just wanted to be normal. He fooled nurses, charmed doctors, made himself out to be a victim to some, an angel to others. But Dr. Harding knew, this was just another experiment. Timothy wasn't healing. He was learning, observing, storing data. During the 3 months Harding remained at the hospital, he helped document the boy's behavior. The sessions revealed a disturbing pattern. Timothy could imitate human reactions perfectly, but none of them were real. He knew when to smile. He knew the exact tone of voice to evoke sympathy. But behind every gesture there was calculation, strategy. Then one day Dr. Martha Fitzgerald, a psychiatrist brought in from Boston, discovered something unexpected. Timothy had convinced a nurse to give him paper and pencil for therapeutic writing exercises. The seemingly innocent entries were hiding codes. Upon closer analysis, the pages revealed encrypted messages, reports, behavioral analyses of doctors, nurses, security staff, and plans, escape plans. Day 47. Dr. F smiled when I mentioned missing my childhood. Sign of increased empathy. I estimate that, with 3 more weeks of consistent behavior, she will allow me to access the garden unsupervised. These findings led to an immediate restriction of Timothy's contact with the staff. But it was too late. He had already mapped everything. He knew who entered each room, where the keys were kept, who was most likely to trust him. In the summer of 1868, Timothy Caldwell vanished. The official version stated that he escaped during a ward transfer, taking advantage of a momentary distraction among the guards. But Dr. Harding knew better. Timothy hadn't fled, he had executed a plan. He had spent a year studying every detail of the hospital. His escape was the climax of yet another experiment. And it worked. In the following years, strange deaths began appearing in neighboring states. Animals killed methodically. Accidents involving children in small towns. Witnesses reported seeing a polite, well-spoken blonde boy who vanished before the bodies were found. But nothing concrete. Nothing traceable. The boy had become a ghost. Dr. Harding dedicated the final years of his life to tracking those cases. He created a dossier with hundreds of pages. Theories, connections, dates, locations, codes. In his last journal entry dated 1891 he wrote, "Timothy was not a mistake of nature. He was a window. A glimpse of what humanity can become when stripped of its soul. He was the future, if evil ever learns to smile politely." The Caldwell farm was abandoned. Thomas and Sarah changed their names and never spoke publicly of their nephew again. The cave was sealed off, but the surrounding forest was never the same. Locals said animals refused to enter. The trees grew twisted. The air felt heavy, as if something still breathed within. In 1923, Dr. Harding's journals were donated to the Missouri Historical Society by his daughter. They remain locked in a restricted access room to this day. Serious researchers still try to understand how a mind so young could become so dangerous. But the most unsettling question remains. What if Timothy Caldwell wasn't the only one? And what if he never died? If this story gave you chills, just imagine what else is still hidden out there. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and share this video with someone who loves dark mysteries and forgotten cases from history. And tell us in the comments, do you think Timothy Caldwell was a freak of nature, or a warning sign? After all, evil doesn't always wear black. Sometimes it wears little shoes, smiles, and says, "Yes, sir." See you in the next case.